alaikum and welcome to a special transmission on the budget. Of course, we've been talking about it since yesterday, but as far as the government is concerned, it maintains, and the finance minister said that as far as IMF is concerned, they've been able to allay concerns that they had as far as the figures in the budget are concerned. They've been shared with IMF, and of course what happens as far as the review is concerned, that's been pending, we will know in the next couple of weeks. What do we expect from the budget as far as the figures that have been given out by the finance minister yesterday? The sectors as far as PISP is concerned, as far as education is concerned, as far as fiscal deficit overall is concerned, we'll be talking about 6.5% is what the finance minister is saying they've been able to reduce it to. What are the ramifications of these figures? What are the ramifications of the kind of incentives that have been given in these sectors? Overall, what does the government envisage in the next year as far as growth is concerned, as far as the tax net is concerned, as far as the overall benefits in the relevant sectors like education, sectors like IT are concerned, and what kind of incentives are they going to be giving out as far as the concerns about being able to meet these requirements, these figures that have been given out are concerned. We'll be talking to experts about what they feel about the government being able to satisfy the relevant targets. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Dr. Shujat Farooq, who's Chief of Research at PIDE. Thank you for being with us. We also have with us Dr. Kamil Tarar, who is an expert on internet policy. Thank you for being with us. Dr. Shujat, when we spoke, when the information minister spoke, she talked about exports, Pakistan's environment, equity, energy. The 5 E's framework that she talked about. How do you look at this and you know the relevant sectors, education, exports, environment, equity, energy, and the kinds of incentives that the government has given out in this budget? We also, you know, in the background of the situation that we have, in the background of an economic charter that again the Prime Minister spoke about, and also in the background of the commitments that have been reneged as far as the IMF is concerned of the last government.
Thank you, Mahrukh. I think this 5 E's framework as proposed by the Planning Commission, initially by S.N. Iqbal and then announced by the Finance Minister, that is commendable because you know that it focuses on export, energy, equity, climate, etc. And that are highly relevant to the Pakistan economy. Especially you look, for example, export and energy. On export side, if you look, you know that right now our services export, like remittances, that are exceed to the goods export. So we have to focus a lot on goods export. Currently, it is around $32 billion. So if we look over the last 2 decades, our trade deficit that is rising. So definitely, you know that on external side, we must have to improve exports because that would be sustainable even for debt servicing as well as to reduce the external imbalances. So export is highly, you know, that relevant. Energy, again, you know that energy is one of the key input in economic growth. And you know that all the industry, primarily their cost of production, that is highly dependent on energy.
Dr. Shujat, when we talk about exports, you know, specifically as far as exports are concerned, certainly, you know, it's no secret we would like to increase exports. Like you said, it's a huge tenet. It's very important for any, you know, takeoff of any kind of economy, and certainly for us. But the kind of environment that we are in at this time, you know, as far as the overall situation, if you look at the industry is concerned, if you look at the kind of, you know, the dollar situation overall, how challenging do you think it's going to be to meet those deadlines?
There are challenges, you know, that in export promotion because over the last 2 decades we were unable to significantly improve export as compared to our regional counterparts like India, like Bangladesh and even Turkey. But I think in budget the government has announced a good thing, and that is to set up an export promotion bureau. So I think that is that is an encouraging element, and we have to strengthen this export promotion setup. Few recommendations may hold to institutionalize this export promotion setup. First, I would suggest that there must be certain technical peoples who look at how we can diversify our exports and how we can explore other markets. Second, I think we must require a clear framework on export promotion, where we may have certain tangible targets over the last 5 years, that how we can improve exports from right now $32 billion to around $100 billion.
Let me go to Dr. Kamil. I'll come back to you. Dr. Kamil, we'll be talking about the different sectors, the incentives that the government has provided, but particularly the gap that we talk about as far as the IMF, the concerns the IMF had with as far as the gaps that were there. Do you think we're going to be able, of course the finance minister said that we've been able to satisfy them. Do you think that moving on from there, the kind of budget that we've seen roll out is going to be, it's going to be able to meet the requirements that the IMF envisages for us?
Actually, the challenges are very difficult to meet. I agree with you, but under the current circumstances, the government is trying its best to involve all the resources of the country, the state and the provinces to bridge this gap. So involving the FBR and the different how to improve the exports, like you were talking, and decrease the imports also. So some of the measures are definitely they have to do immediately, otherwise it's not possible to manage this. But there is no short term solution to this problem. We have to think about on a mid-term to long term basis, like we have to have import substitution for especially for the energy sector.
Do you think that this budget envisages the kind of structural reforms that invariably our economy has needed for a long time, regardless of the governments, because successive governments have promised, and we saw that one of the promises that the last government came in with was those structural reforms, and not just with regard to the economy, in other areas also. Do you think we're actually, as far as the PMLN is concerned, it says that it's going to go there. That's what their ultimate target is. Do you think that's something that the plan envisages at this time?
Actually, again, very good thought. The issue is either you are an expert of some area or you are trying to learn something.
Okay.
So the good thing about this government is they have delivered in the past and they have the plan and they want to implement this plan. And once you have all the big picture in front of you, and especially as you rightly mentioned, the structural reforms, because I have been working as from the private side, bringing foreign investment to Pakistan for last 20 years in this country. So the government structure has really deteriorated. How to handle, although on paper it's very easy to say the write-ups or the reports or the plans that we want to do this, we want to do that, but on ground what are the measures to handle these structural reforms and the claims that any government does for to deliver, those are very important. So I agree with the finance minister and I believe in him that whatever he talked, and I hope he will be able to deliver that. But of course you have to depend on the on the structure
and the economic climate generally also.
Yeah, economic climate depends on the the confidence of the citizens and of the world in you. So at least we have to act confident, and
When we talk about external factors, let me go to Dr. Shujat. Dr. Shujat, when we talk about external factors primarily, is it possible to ignore them? Because, you know, of course, we talk about economic charter, which the Prime Minister spoke about. We talk about political stability, which, you know, fortunately we are seeping, you know, stepping towards as far as political stability is concerned. Those factors, investor confidence, you know, the kind of confidence we would like for money to come from, you know, overseas Pakistanis, all of those things. And we see certain rebates there also as far as the government is concerned. That climate overall has to be maintained also, and that climate we need for the kind of economic growth. So all of these figures and all of these incentives can't be seen in isolation. Isn't that true?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. You know that if you look the historical facts as well as you know that leading emerging economies, external factors, both you know that domestic as well as you know that environment of economy, that matters a lot. For example, you know that budget, you know that would be mostly executed by the government, but it is the private sector that will lead basically your three pillars of economy, that is agriculture, manufacturing, as well as the services sector. And same, you know that we have even external balances, like for example you can see that there is remittances, there is foreign direct investment. So all these factors, they are highly matter. And so one, political stability, that is the one factor, but I think the government role is basically to ease the doing of business as well as build the trust of investors, so they invest. Two factors I think in the context of Pakistan economy that are highly matter. First is the political stability, because you know that it will definitely build the trust of investor. And second, you know that we are facing climate, you know that threats, and you can see that last year we have certain floods, and it has adverse impact of economy for more than $33 billion. So definitely, you know that again on climate factors, we are, although they are non-economic factors, but they have
a huge role to play.
Huge role to economy. So definitely, I think budget purpose is to build resilience, provide opportunity to the public, and as well as provide equity to the masses.
Small and medium enterprises, Dr. Kamil, you know that there is an aim to incentivize that area. How do you look at the kind of incentives that the government has provided within this budget? Do you think they're going to be able to sustain? Do you think they're going to be able to perhaps do a little better there?
I think SMEs or small and medium enterprises, they are the basic backbone of any country, especially in a country like Pakistan, because large enterprises, they of course play a major role in the you know, in the driving the economy, but SMEs to support the, because they create jobs on a large scale. So the government, I think they have announced to raise the you know, from segment of SME from 250 million to I think 800 million, and involve the IT sector also. Because involving the IT sector in the SME is a big step, because this is how, you know, our young generation, they will be able to start the business and they are ready for it. And the government has announced a lot of incentives also for the IT sector, for especially for the freelancers, to, you know, just to submit a single tax of 0.25.
The government says that those in the IT sector are quite revolutionary, the measures that have been given. Do you agree?
Yeah, of course they are. Just, you know, as I was saying, just announcing something is not important. Recognizing something is very important. Yes, we recognize this sector.
And if we look at India, for example, it is one of those sectors that is singularly responsible for the kind of boost we've seen, you know, across the border. So perhaps, you know, we can also try to do better as far as
we have our own model, and the Indian model is a very good model to copy. But then again, every, you know, nation in this region has, like Thailand has its own model, Bangladesh has its own model. And all these countries are ready for, you know, to export the IT related services and to export the human resource to English speaking countries. And Pakistan, because 60% of the people are young, of the whole population, and many are ready for the employment. So IT can be not only for the export point of view, but for
also
our local
for
consumption.
youth particularly. Let me go to Abdul Jaleel Saab, who's a senior economist, and I'll come back to you. Jaleel Saab, can you hear me?
Thank you very much. Nice to talk to
Jaleel
you.
Saab, thank you for joining us. You know, among other things, we're also talking about the youth and the role the youth, you know, the incentives that the government has given as far as particularly youth is concerned in terms of the business opportunities, in terms of the changes. How are you overall looking at those?
You know, when you go through the budgetary document, you find that the government has tried to focus on the infrastructure development of the society, number one, and secondly, they have focused their attention upon the development of the youth program. You know, and the various modalities have been prescribed. One of them is the development of the SME, which I think it's a very fruitful, essential step that the government have taken so far, because SMEs always provide the basic infrastructure for the development of heavy engineering sector and heavy industry sector. So, and it was most needed as well in this respect. Then IT, the world market is now looking for the IT specialists and IT product as well, especially software, in field of software. And I think that the government has appreciated the situation in this respect, and they have tried to allocate sufficient, I would say they are not sufficient enough to meet the requirement as exist in the market. But still, and I think that it will be very helpful in the sense that we will be able to export, apart from software, the IT specialists, which are much needed in the international market as well. Number two. And number three is that this, the medical sector, I believe, have been always suffering in our country as well. The world market, especially, I would say, the field of nursing, even the developed country are facing a shortage of the medical doctors and the nurses as well. This is an area in which I think the government can allocate, government should allocate more resources for the mobilization of our new generation in these fields, so that we should be able to.
What about the public sector development programs that the government has?
Program, the public sector program so far, I would, as a result of my own experience, almost 60% of the budget is 60% of the total expenditure incurred on the public sector is met through the foreign exchange. Foreign exchange is a very necessary component. Then 40%, I think, is met through the Pak rupee. I do not know how the government will balance in this respect, but we are running short of the foreign exchange, and that's a desperate need. Because without that, you will not be able to upscale and develop the high-tech sector, which is most needed in this country as well.
Right, fair enough. Let me come back to you. Dr. Shujat, do you agree with what Abdul Jaleel Saab is saying? He's saying that, you know, for the sector to take off, the kind of background, the kind of homework that we need, do you think that we have that those factors are there?
I think there are certain good elements in this budget, as you have mentioned earlier, that what is specific for youth in this budget. I think there are certain elements that will definitely impact on youth, and you know that youth is an immense potential, because 60% of our population is below 25. So this budget has an IT focus first. So definitely, you know that young people, they are engaged with IT sector. So definitely their entrepreneurial activities, that will emerge. Second, you know that government has announced that internet is. So again, internet isness that will impact on youth. And an encouraging element is the restoration of higher education budget. You know that there was certain cut over the last 2-3 years. So definitely, you know that it will ease the youth who are studying at higher education. Right now we have around 2.7 million youth that is at higher education. And you also see that there is, I think, 10 billion is allocated on laptop scheme. So definitely again it would be on higher education. I think there are certain, you know that again budget is 1 year planning, and for economic, you know that development, you require a medium term and long-term planning. So there are certain elements that has place some long-term, that economic reforms, as you can see that government has announced that there would be pension fund. In this budget, you can see that more than 700 billion is allocated for pension. So pension is becoming a nasty baby, that because budget. So it is good that if government establish a pension fund and
which is going to be a contributory based.
And that would be contributory,
so
because otherwise you know that this pension could be unsustainable in next coming
so
years.
They've taken, so that's a welcome measure.
Yeah,
and
so that is a highly welcome measure, that because that we cannot afford that this pension would go around 50% of 60% of budget, and in coming 10 to 15 years we would not able to pay. So pension fund, I think that is a good, again export promotion, as I mentioned earlier, that is a good element, because we need dollars.
Let me go to Dr. Kamil. Dr. Kamil, as far as public sector spending is concerned, there's a lot that has been reserved for infrastructure. That is, as far as the, infrastructure is concerned, there's also equal importance given to social sectors. Like, for example, higher education, again, like we're talking about health, governance, climate change, all of those things. Do you think the kind of self-sufficiency that we need in food and water resources, are we giving substantial importance there as far as this budget is concerned? Because we saw climate change also, there is the issue of food security, all of those things are also extremely important.
Yes, you are absolutely right, because food security and is the, it's the backbone of the economy right now, because the whole agriculture sector, they need support. Like the government, they have announced the solarization of tube wells, which is a very good step. I would like to again come back to the point of supply chain, because Pakistan in food has experienced this transformation of technology, its application in the food security also, because food security is just like any other security of the nation. Like there has to be abundant food at affordable price available to everyone. So off and on we see these shortages of wheat or sugar and fertilizer, so all kind of these things. So one thing I can recommend to the government is to implement the technology also in the supply chain. Again, IT comes in, farmers are already using the IT services, the apps, on their own. So the government has to announce more initiative to support the implementation of technology for the farmers, and especially in the supply chain, in the markets, whether it's the animal market or the food markets, because there is a lot of manipulation at the middleman end, and also a lot of wastage also, because our products, we can export them also. But because I've served in the Food Security Ministry in 2010, I used to be the SPS Sanitary Phytosanitary Specialist for WTO. So I have quite a knowledge about that. So Pakistan can really benefit from the export of food products.
But as far as technology is concerned, are we, there needs to be significant inroads as far as agriculture even is concerned for us to, deal with that market we need as far as export is concerned, isn't it? Because farmers, and certainly, farmers on a large scale are lacking that kind of technology, no?
Yes, again, like let's take one example, rice, because it's a very established commodity, and it's required all over the world, and Pakistan has a big market share globally. So technology again has a big role to play in the export of rice. And as you rightly said, the farmers, they don't have the knowledge to, and the understanding how to capture those markets, new markets. So that's where these, digital marketplaces like this Alibaba and international players.
But Dr. Kamil, when we talk, I mean, for farmers who have large tracts of land, big landowners, perhaps, those options, those are there, but they have of course more options. But as far as small farmers on a very small scale, for them to get to that kind of market, for them to transcend like you're saying, they're finding it particularly challenging. Can we do something about it?
Actually, farmers are quite well aware of the benefits of the technology and the information, whether it's the using of proper seed or the weather conditions, or the even to how to sell the products and how to get the right seeds. So they are well aware.
Okay.
But this is what I was suggesting, and you were also pointing out the structural reforms. You know, because I've served in the ministry, there are always projects after projects after projects. So you know, you have to get the results, and since the Prime Minister, he is a very hard-working person, and I really appreciate his enthusiasm and his track record. So one thing is to, you know, give targets to all these ministers that you deliver this, otherwise, you know, you will be replaced in this government or next government, whatever. So that is the issue. It's not about the technology. Technology is available, people are aware, and they want to get the benefit of the technology.
You're saying give your relevant people achievable targets, and that then they have to meet those, and I'm sure that the Prime Minister
Follow-up is very, very important.
I think he's the right person for that job. I think we can all agree on that. Let me go to Abdul Jalil Saab. I'll come back to you. Jalil Saab, one of the concerns that that is consistently being voiced is the ability of this government to what is being called being a populist budget, and for them to be able to meet these commitments. How are you looking at that? Do you think that the government will be able to meet them? Of course, we are looking at the Finance Minister and the Prime Minister saying that they are confident that they will be able to do so. We also have a record of the Finance Minister delivering. There's no doubt about that. But how are you looking at that?
You know, as far as the social sector is concerned, this pertains to social sector. You cannot ignore it. The purchasing power of the people, if it does not improve, the cycle of the economy will not set in motion. It depends. You know, the market has to activate itself through the active chain supply system. And active chain supply system depends upon how much cash the people have got in their own hand. And if there is a shortage of the cash, what they will do in return, they will dispose of their own savings or their assets in order to meet the expenditure. So I think that it was a pressing necessity that the government have tried to meet by raising pension and salary scale. It was much needed as well, because providing relief to middle class and a low middle class indirectly contribute towards the growth of economy as well as to the activation of the supply chain system. So therefore, this is number one. And the second reality is that because of the purchasing power of the middle class, if it is low, then it has a very serious consequences on the political stability as well. Not only on the economic stability, the political stability as well. And it becomes pretty difficult for the government to achieve their ends. You know, the middle class constitutes the basic vertebral column, the main structure of the society. Every government tries to protect the middle class because it provides
Jalil Saab, that's a very relevant, interesting thing, and I think I want to talk more about this. You know, there is a concentration on the lower class or the lower strata of the society, but like you said, the middle class is extremely important. And the way that the budget is structured, do you think that it envisages the kind of importance that we need to give to the middle class for them to be able to do better, so that, you know, we can see a change on the whole?
To some extent, it will be able to help relieve. It will be help to take off some of the burden from the growing middle class and the upper class. The purchasing power was suffering under heavy inflation. It will contribute because more cash was needed in their hand in order to activate the market forces as well. So even in every social welfare society, always under these circumstances, they always provide some kind of a financial relief to their own people, poor class or a middle class, so that with the availability of a greater cash, they will be able to purchase more, they will be able to set in motion the market forces. So I think it will have a positive effect on the national economy.
Right, fair enough. Let me go to Dr. Shujat. Dr. Shujat, let's talk more about the middle class. Are let's talk about incentives you feel that, are geared towards the middle class doing better. Is there sufficient concentration of the budget towards providing them with some relief?
There is cushion for the middle class, and that always it is the middle class
that suffers perhaps
who basically lead the that economy, because that, for example, on consumer side, every government and public policy aim that there should be less inequality as well as less poverty. So definitely that middle class, it should be healthy. There is cushion, for example, if we look the agriculture targeting in the budget, there is more than 1700 billion subsidies. So definitely they will benefit the middle class. Similarly, you can see that social protection is another area where there is more than 450 billion allocation. So definitely chronic and ultra poor, that will be supported by this, these incentives. But again, that economic targeting, growth targeting of 3.5%, that have certain challenges, keeping in view, that the government have the inflation targeting of 21%, and that interest rate is also high. And we are in a that election year. So these are host of challenges that might impact the confidence of the investor, as well as that inflation of 21%, and this inflation might go if we face certain external challenges or shocks in food supply chain. So that is a difficult.
Dr. Kamil, of course, inflation is a huge challenge at this time. Do you think that there are chances it might decrease? What is the overall trend at this time?
Inflation, as you know, it depends on the fuel prices and the monetary rate and the the foreign exchange reserves of the country. So since those things have been out of control, so that's why the inflation has been so high. And I hope with the steps that they have announced in the budget, hopefully they will come down. But it's not a matter of, Pakistan, we have to think on a long-term basis.
And isn't it a phenomena that's largely global also, as far as inflation is concerned?
Yes, because it's been disrupted because of the Ukraine war and some other reasons also. But definitely the Ukraine, the gas prices and the, all these, they have added to the problems of the countries, nations and ordinary citizens. But coming back to your issue, your question of structural reforms, I would suggest the government to, rethink about the e-government, because the government structure, as far as, my personal opinion is concerned, it is the most inefficient system right now.
Okay.
It's not the fault of the politicians. Unfortunately, it has been because of the bureaucratic system was supposed to be digitized long time ago. But all the successive governments, they have been promising this thing and, again, not having a long-term view on this. And all the challenges that we are facing right now, whether it's in the energy sector or the social sector or the business or the exports, all these things, the countries have their own economies based on the digitization. And the digitization is driven by the digital government. Okay. So the government, and one example I can quote you, how the governments are thinking, the superpowers are thinking right now. 2 days ago, you have witnessed the Atlantic Accord between the Rishi Sunak, Prime Minister of UK, and the Joe Biden, the President of USA. Yes. And that accord is based on the collaboration on the artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence is not something science fiction. It's already happening. The Google Maps that we are using, it's artificial intelligence. the rides that we order online or the food, it's all based on artificial intelligence. The cyber security. So the government has to put a central focus on the technology, on the innovation. I believe in Pakistan. I believe in its citizens to adopt the technology. The same government, they launched 4G in 2014, which was a big step. And the trials of the 5Gs are conducted by one of the company. So I would request the government to, think about that. And that's how, all these things will contribute. And especially our people who are living abroad, they can contribute a lot to Pakistan.
What about incentives as far as overseas Pakistanis are concerned?
Overseas Pakistanis are, they play a big role in the remittances.
Yes.
And a lot of incentives on the tax side, on the some kind of cards and things like that. Again, they are all very good steps. But a lot more can be done in terms of their involvement in the development of Pakistan. So some kind of program in which they can contribute their finances, their ideas, and their goodwill.
And that also, I think, is linked to investor confidence again.
Yes.
For them to be able to
investor on the big projects, that is a different institutional kind of investment. But we can categorize like a lot of investment has come into real estate, but since our departments, they don't have any innovative plan. So these the world has changed, the world has gone into blockchain, decentralized finance, the cryptocurrency and things like that. And the countries next door like Dubai, UAE, they have adopted all these things.
Let me go to Abdul Jalil Sab. Jalil Sab, yes, we want there to be investor confidence. Yes, we want there to be those requisite changes that will bring the country, economic growth, to economic growth. But how satisfied are you with the kind of investment, areas of investment the budget envisages? And also, do you think that these are, whether it's inching towards it, whether it's making, even a 0.1% headway there? Is it going to work towards giving the economy the kind of self-sufficiency that we need?
The government has made a lot of allocation to the various sectors of our society, agriculture sector, IT sector, which IT sector, in my view, is the most important sector because it is the future of every society now. Your total economic development, social development, and the career of the youth, human resource development, it all depends upon how many miles you have covered in your advanced technology of IT. Number one. Number two, as to say, the government have taken I would say that within the given resources, they have taken some satisfactory steps. But the question is that the big question again remains the same. The shortage of the foreign exchange will definitely affect the paces of our high-tech development in our society, because we depend a lot on the imported high-tech or on advanced technology. And number one. And number two is that the government, I would say that the government should also take some steps for the retention of the talent in this country, because the country is facing a heavy brain drain of the talent from the society. IT experts, medical experts, with an highly educational and professional class, highly qualified professional class, they are leaving this country. Talent retention has become a big challenge with every society now. And the market is desperately looking for those people who can outfit or who can compete with the big challenges. And I would say that our society and our educational system have produced some outstanding individuals. But unfortunately, our market is too narrow, or for that matter, too limited to accommodate. In this respect, the government should provide extra incentive. That is what is needed. Extra incentive being security, financial security as well, job satisfaction as well, and providing necessary infrastructure for carrying out R&D in our society. R&D sector has been almost ignored, I would say. The government has to take steps.
Abdul Jalil Sahab says that that the market has to provide all those incentives that we need for the kind of growth that we want to see. But is it, in your opinion, too soon to expect the kind of results we want to see? As far as this government is concerned, again, the government said that they've tried to satisfy the IMF with the background of reneging on promises that we saw in the last government. They've tried to assure them as far as, commitments in the future are concerned. There's also a coalition government in place. This is a people-friendly budget, giving maximum rebates in the kind of climate that we see. But the kind of results that will come, of course, are going to be with long-term planning, long-term direction. Perhaps this will set the tone, this will set the direction, and then we will have to see whether we can implement more structural reforms to combat where we are headed.
Yeah, I think in the short term, right now the government has the focus to restore the middle class and to protect the vulnerable. So that's why there is subsidies, there is allocation on social protection, as well as that export promotion. But that certain economic challenges, they are chronic, and they are not. It is not the fault of this government, or even for example, we are facing the productivity challenges, and you can see that in 2001. Our exports were equal to Vietnam. Right now, Vietnam is around $316 billion. Bangladesh was in half of just $5 billion export in 2001. They are crossing now 52 billion. So I think productivity, that is a big challenge, and export promotion and targeted subsidies and focus on IT sector as well as SMEs, that will definitely impact on the export promotion. Second, that investment is another, because that our challenge is that we have a limited formal financial inclusion system, so that's why our savings are just 13-14%, and unfortunately they are stagnant over the last 5 decades. Look at India, etc. They are saving around 25 to 30% of their income, so that's why they have cushion to invest more. So again, that until we will not save, we are unable to invest more. So
this is in essentially the kind of damage control mode that the government said that it came in. They've still managed to give this kind of a budget with incentives. These are incentives, but again you have to look that that there is also that borrowing in this budget. So definitely again on one side that there is incentive, so that will safeguard the public side. But on the other side that we have certain internal borrowing as well as that international borrowing. So definitely that debt servicing, that is a big challenge for us, and that is rising day by day. In this budget that 7,000 billion that is allocated for that debt servicing. So definitely there is little cushion to spend on the public. And to you, Dr. Kamil, I'm running out of time. Your comments, and then we'll have to close.
I think under the current circumstances, it's a good effort. And but again, coming back to your point of structural issues, that is the the key to turn around Pakistan on short term to long term basis. Otherwise, we will be fighting these fires time and again.
So when we talk about, right, fair enough. So when we talk about the economic charter, we talk about a long-term plan, and we talk about successive governments that can agree on the direction they want to set the country to, and for that to rise above whatever political considerations there are. Thank you so much for joining us today. Dr. Shujat Farooq, thank you for being with us. Dr. Kamil Tarar, thank you for joining us today. Abdul Jalil Sahab, thank you for being with us. Yes, there are criticisms as far as this being a very populist budget, but at the same time we have to be able to look at the kind of political climate that the government came in, the coalition government that has been plagued with problems of political instability, coupled with an IMF program that was stalled by the last government. They're reneging on their promises, and not being able to meet their commitments. All of that background aside, the question is that can we now put aside our political differences? Can we put aside our overall political differences and move towards a kind of long-term plan? And the Prime Minister talked about economic stability, where we can set the direction in which we want the country to progress. Perhaps agree on wider structural reforms, perhaps agree on measures that will not be dependent on any government, that will not be dependent on changes that invariably jolt any economic progress. Let's hope that we can move towards all of that. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.